The gunshot echoed across the dusty plains of Concordia, Kansas, in 1878, shattering the evening calm as Nora Vaughn dove behind a water trough, her heart hammering against her ribs. She hadn't expected to find trouble so quickly in this frontier town, but trouble had found her nonetheless. 3 days since she'd stepped off the westbound train, and already she was caught in the crossfire of a saloon dispute that had spilled onto the main street. Dust clung to her tattered dress as another shot rang out, splintering wood just inches from her face. Nora pressed herself flat against the ground, the weight of her past pressing down heavier than her body against the Kansas soil. She'd fled Chicago with nothing but a small carpet bag and the desperate hope that nobody would recognize her name or face this far west. "Stay down, madam." A deep voice commanded from somewhere to her left. Through the haze of dust and gunpowder, Nora glimpsed a tall figure crouched behind a hitching post, revolver drawn. His movements were precise, confident a man who knew how to handle himself in a firefight. Another shot exploded from the saloon doorway, and the stranger returned fire with deadly accuracy. A cry of pain followed, then silence descended upon the street. "You all right over there?" the man called out, his voice gentler now that the immediate danger had passed. Nora managed a weak nod before realizing he probably couldn't see her. "Yes," she called back, her voice barely more than a whisper. The stranger holstered his weapon and approached, his spurs jingling with each deliberate step. As he drew closer, Nora took in the weathered hat pulled low over his eyes, the sun-browned skin of his face, and the star-shaped badge pinned to his vest. "Sheriff Noah Steele," he introduced himself, extending a calloused hand to help her up. "Welcome to Concordia, though I reckon this isn't quite the greeting you were hoping for." Nora hesitated before accepting his help, feeling the strength in his grip as he pulled her to her feet. His eyes were the color of the Kansas sky, clear and piercing, and they seemed to look straight through her carefully constructed facade. "Nora Vaughn," she replied, withdrawing her hand quickly and brushing the dust from her skirts. "I arrived on Tuesday's train." Sheriff Steele nodded slowly. "I remember. You took a room above the millinery shop." His gaze swept over her, taking in the quality of her clothes, once fine but now travel-worn, and the way she carried herself despite the circumstances. "What brings a woman like you to a place like Concordia, Miss Vaughn?" Nora stiffened. "A fresh start," she answered curtly. "Now, if you'll excuse me." She turned to leave, but the sheriff's voice stopped her. "That man in the saloon was looking for someone. A woman from Chicago. Wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" Ice flooded Nora's veins. They'd found her already. Her carefully planned escape, the distance she'd put between herself and Chicago, it hadn't been enough. "No," she lied, avoiding his gaze. "I know nothing of it." Sheriff Steele studied her for a long moment. "Well, if you remember anything that might be helpful, my office is just down the street." He tipped his hat. "In the meantime, you might want to be careful where you wander. Concordia's peaceful most days, but we get our share of trouble passing through." Nora nodded stiffly and hurried away, feeling his eyes on her back as she retreated toward the safety of her rented room. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with the key to her door, and once inside, she slid to the floor, back against the wood, as tears threatened to spill from her eyes. The fresh start she'd hoped for seemed to be slipping away before she'd even had a chance to begin. She'd have to move on, find another town, another identity, another lie to tell. The weight of her past pressed down on her chest until she could hardly breathe. "I can't outrun it forever," she whispered to the empty room. What she didn't know was that Sheriff Noah Steele stood on the street below, looking up at her window with a troubled expression. Something about Nora Vaughn stirred his curiosity, and awakened protective instincts he'd thought long buried. There was a story behind those guarded eyes of hers, one he intended to uncover, for reasons he couldn't quite explain even to himself. Morning came with the persistent crowing of a rooster and the sounds of Concordia coming to life. Nora had barely slept, her mind racing with plans and contingencies. She needed money if she was to keep running. The meager savings she'd brought from Chicago wouldn't last another week. She dressed in her least conspicuous outfit and pinned her auburn hair beneath a simple bonnet. The newspaper had advertised a position at the town's only restaurant, and while waiting tables wasn't what she'd imagined for herself, beggars couldn't afford to be choosers. The Bell and Whistle occupied a prime spot on Main Street, its freshly painted sign swinging gently in the morning breeze. Inside, the owner, a rotund man named Harold Bell, looked her up and down skeptically. "Ever waited tables before, Miss Vaughn?" Nora forced a smile. "I'm a quick learner, Mr. Bell. It's hard work," he warned. "Miners and cowboys aren't known for their manners, and the pay ain't much." "I understand," Nora replied, "but I need the position, sir." Perhaps he saw the desperation behind her smile because Bell nodded slowly. "You can start today. Mary will show you what to do." By midday, Nora's feet ached and her arms burned from carrying heavy trays, but the work kept her mind occupied. She was serving coffee to a table of farmers when the restaurant door opened and Sheriff Steele walked in. Their eyes met briefly before Nora looked away, focusing intently on pouring without spilling. "Sheriff," Harold greeted warmly. "The usual, please, Harry." Steele took a seat at the counter, his back to the room but his eyes finding Nora's reflection in the mirror behind the bar. Nora moved through the dining room efficiently, avoiding the sheriff's table until Mary nudged her. "Table 4 needs coffee," she whispered. "Don't worry, the sheriff's one of the good ones." Reluctantly, Nora approached his table, coffee pot in hand. "Coffee, Sheriff." Noah Steele looked up, those blue eyes studying her face. "Thank you, Miss Vaughn. Settling in at the Bell and Whistle, I see." "A woman needs to eat," she replied, filling his cup carefully. "Indeed she does." He took a sip, watching her over the rim. "You know, there are safer places to work in Concordia. The school teacher's looking for an assistant. Thought that might suit your background better." Nora's hand stilled. "My background? You have the bearing of an educated woman, the way you speak, how you hold yourself." His voice lowered. "And those aren't the hands of someone who's spent her life in service." Nora withdrew her hand quickly, tucking it into her apron pocket. "You're quite observant, Sheriff. It's my job to notice things." He smiled slightly. "Like how you flinch whenever the door opens, or how you keep your back to the wall." "Is there something you want from me?" Nora asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Noah leaned forward. "Just the truth, Miss Vaughn." "That man I shot yesterday, he was asking about a woman who stole something valuable from a prominent Chicago businessman. Interesting timing, wouldn't you say?" Nora felt the blood drain from her face. "I should get back to work." "If you're in trouble," Noah said quietly, "I can help. But I need to know what I'm dealing with." "You can't help me," Nora replied. "No one can." Before he could respond, the restaurant door burst open and a young boy rushed in, his face flushed with excitement. "Sheriff, stage is coming in and the driver's signaling trouble." Noah was on his feet instantly, dropping coins on the table. "We'll continue this conversation later, Miss Vaughn." He tipped his hat before striding out the door. Nora watched him go, her heart pounding. She needed to leave Concordia tonight. The sheriff was getting too close to the truth, and if he discovered who she really was, what she'd done. No, she couldn't let that happen. The stagecoach incident provided an unexpected reprieve. A band of outlaws had attempted to rob the coach about 10 miles outside of town. and though they'd been driven off, one passenger had been wounded. The sheriff and his deputy spent the remainder of the day dealing with the aftermath, giving Nora precious time to plan her escape. After her shift ended, she returned to her room and began packing her meager belongings. The evening train to Denver would be her salvation, a larger city where she could disappear among the crowds. A knock at her door froze her in place. "Miss Vaughn, it's Sheriff Steele." Nora hastily shoved her half-packed carpetbag under the bed. "Just a moment," she called, checking her appearance in the small mirror before opening the door. Noah stood in the hallway, his hat in his hands. "May I come in? It's important." Every instinct told her to refuse, but his expression, grave and concerned, made her step aside. Noah entered, filling the small room with his presence. He glanced at the bed, where a corner of her carpetbag peeked out, and Nora knew her plans had been discovered. "Going somewhere?" he asked quietly. "That's none of your concern," she replied, lifting her chin defiantly. Noah sighed. "I've received a telegram from Chicago. The man who was looking for you, he works for Ezra Blackburn." Nora couldn't suppress her flinch at the name. Ezra Blackburn, one of Chicago's wealthiest men, whose cruelty was matched only by his influence. "I don't know who that is," she lied. "Don't you?" Noah reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded newspaper clipping. "Nora Vaughn, former governess to the Blackburn family, wanted for theft and—" He hesitated. "The murder of Mrs. Eliza Blackburn." The accusation hung in the air between them. Nora felt her legs weaken and she sank onto the edge of the bed. "I didn't kill her," she whispered, the truth finally escaping her lips. "I would never." Noah studied her face intently. "Then tell me what happened." And suddenly, Nora found herself doing just that. The words poured out of her: how she'd come to work for the Blackburns, teaching their young daughter. How she'd discovered Ezra's cruel treatment of his wife. The bruises Eliza tried to hide. The quiet weeping Nora heard at night. She was planning to leave him, Nora explained, tears tracking down her cheeks. "We were packing her things when Ezra returned home unexpectedly. He was in a rage. He struck her. She fell against the fireplace." Nora's voice broke. There was so much blood. "He told me no one would believe my word against his, that I'd hang for her murder, so I ran." Noah knelt before her, his expression softening. "Did you take anything when you fled?" Nora nodded slowly, reaching beneath her mattress to withdraw a small leather book. Her diary. She documented everything: the abuse, his corrupt business dealings. "It's the only proof I have." Noah took the diary, thumbing through the pages with a grim expression. "This is evidence, Nora. With this and your testimony, it won't be enough," she interrupted. "You don't understand Ezra's influence. He owns judges, policemen. Even if I went back, I'd never get justice. I'd only get a noose." Noah closed the diary, his jaw set in determination. "Then we won't go back. Not yet, anyway, but you can't keep running forever. What choice do I have?" Nora asked bitterly. Noah's eyes met hers, steady and resolute. "Let me help you. I have friends in the federal marshal's office who wouldn't be swayed by Blackburn's money. With this diary and the right connections, we might be able to clear your name. Why would you risk yourself for me?" Nora asked. "You barely know me." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I've spent my life trying to protect people who can't protect themselves, and—" He hesitated. "There's something about you, Miss Vaughn, something that tells me you're worth fighting for." For the first time since fleeing Chicago, Nora felt a flicker of hope. It was dangerous to trust this man, to believe in his promises of help, but the alternative was a life of constant fear and flight. "What would you have me do?" she asked finally. "Stay in Concordia. Continue working at the Bell and Whistle. Act as though nothing has changed," Noah instructed. "I'll send inquiries to my contacts, but it will take time. In the meantime, I'll make sure you're protected." Nora nodded slowly, though doubt still clouded her heart. "And if your plan fails?" "If Blackburn's men find me here," Noah's expression hardened, "they'll have to go through me first." The conviction in his voice sent an unexpected warmth through Nora's chest. It had been so long since anyone had stood up for her, had believed in her innocence without question. "Thank you, Sheriff," she whispered. Noah rose to his feet, placing his hat back on his head. "Call me Noah. And try to get some rest, Miss Vaughn. Tomorrow is a new day." As he moved toward the door, Nora found herself reluctant to see him leave. "Noah," she called softly, stopping him in his tracks. "Be careful. Ezra Blackburn isn't a man who forgives those who stand in his way." Noah's smile was grim. "Neither am I, Miss Vaughn, neither am I." After he departed, Nora sat in the silence of her room, the half-packed carpetbag a reminder of her interrupted flight. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to contemplate a future beyond the next town, the next train, the next false name. It was a dangerous luxury, this hope, but as she prepared for bed, Nora realized she was too weary to fight it any longer. That night, she slept without nightmares for the first time since Eliza's death. The following weeks established a routine that gradually eased Nora's constant state of vigilance. Each morning, she worked her shift at the restaurant, growing more confident in her role. Harold Bell praised her efficiency, and the regular customers began to recognize her, greeting her by name when they entered. Noah made a point of taking his meals at the Bell and Whistle whenever possible, sometimes lingering over coffee long after the lunch rush had cleared. Their conversations were guarded at first, but as days passed into weeks, Nora found herself sharing stories from her life before the Blackburns, her childhood in Pennsylvania, her education at a women's seminary, her dreams of opening a school someday. Noah, in turn, told her of his youth on a cattle ranch in Texas, his time fighting in the war between the states despite his young age, and his journey north afterward, seeking purpose in the aftermath of so much destruction. "I never planned to be a sheriff," he admitted one quiet afternoon. "Thought I'd go back to ranching eventually, but there's something about this life knowing you're making a difference, protecting people who need it." "It suits you," Nora observed. "You have a natural authority." Noah smiled wryly. "My father would disagree. Always said I was too soft-hearted for my own good." "Kindness isn't weakness," Nora replied. "It takes more strength to show mercy than to punish." Their eyes met across the table, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits despite their different paths. Such moments became precious to Nora, bright spots in her cautious existence. She began to notice things about Noah she hadn't allowed herself to see before: the way sunlight caught in his hair, turning it golden at the edges, the crow's feet that appeared when he smiled genuinely, the gentleness of his hands despite their strength. These observations troubled her. Attachment was a luxury she couldn't afford, not when her future remained so uncertain. Noah had sent letters to his contacts, but responses were slow in coming, and each passing day brought the possibility that Blackburn's men might discover her whereabouts. Noah seemed to sense her growing unease, for one evening he appeared at her door with an unexpected proposition. "I'd like to teach you to shoot," he announced without preamble. Nora blinked in surprise. "I beg your pardon." "If trouble comes," Noah explained, "I want you to be able to defend yourself. I can't be with you every minute of the day." The thought of handling a firearm made Nora's stomach twist, but she recognized the practicality of his suggestion. When would these lessons take place? "Tomorrow's Sunday. We can ride out after church, find somewhere quiet." Nora hesitated. "People will talk if we're seen leaving town together." A faint flush colored Noah's cheeks. "Let them talk. Your safety is more important than gossip." And so, the following day, Nora found herself riding beside Noah along a dusty trail that led away from Concordia. She wore a borrowed riding skirt and sat somewhat awkwardly on the gentle mare Noah had procured for her. The day was warm, the Kansas prairie stretching endlessly around them, wildflowers nodding in the breeze. "My deputy thinks I've lost my mind," Noah commented as they rode. "Says I'm risking everything on a hunch that you're innocent." Nora's hands tightened on the reins. "Perhaps he's right." Noah shook his head. "Wilson's a good man, but he sees the world in black and white. I learned long ago that most of life happens in the shades between." He glanced at her. "Besides, I trust my instincts. They've kept me alive this long." They reached a secluded clearing bordered by a shallow creek, where Noah had set up several bottles on a fallen log. He dismounted and helped Nora from her saddle, his hands strong and steady at her waist. The contact was brief but left her oddly breathless. "Have you ever fired a gun before?" he asked, leading her toward the makeshift targets. "No," Nora admitted. "My father considered firearms unladylike." Noah's lips quirked. Out here, being alive trumps being ladylike. He unholstered a smaller revolver than his own. "This is a Colt pocket. Lighter than my Peacemaker, easier to handle." He demonstrated the proper stance, how to hold the weapon, how to aim. "Breathe steady," he instructed. "Squeeze the trigger, don't pull it." Nora's first shot went wide, the recoil stronger than she'd expected. Noah stood behind her, adjusting her posture with careful hands. "Relax your shoulders," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "Plant your feet more firmly." Nora was acutely aware of his proximity, the solid warmth of his chest nearly touching her back. She forced herself to focus on the target, exhaling slowly as she squeezed the trigger again. This time, the bottle shattered satisfyingly. "Well done." Noah's approval sent a flush of pleasure through her. They practiced until Nora's arms ached and she could hit the target more often than not. As the afternoon waned, they sat by the creek, sharing a simple lunch Noah had packed. The food was nothing special: bread, cheese, apples, but the setting transformed it into a feast. "Thank you for this," Nora said, watching the water ripple over stones. "Not just the shooting lesson, but everything. Your belief in me." Noah studied her profile, his expression thoughtful. "You know, when I first saw you diving behind that water trough, I thought you were just another Eastern lady who'd stumbled into trouble. But there's steel in you, Nora Vaughn." "Not steel," she corrected softly. "Just the will to survive." "That's more than many have," Noah replied. He hesitated, then added, "I received a letter yesterday from my friend in the marshal's office." Nora's heart skipped. "And he's looking into Blackburn's affairs, discreetly." Noah picked up a stone and skipped it across the water. "Apparently, you're not the first to accuse him of violence, though most withdraw their claims mysteriously." "Or disappear entirely," Nora said grimly. Noah nodded. "My friend believes with Eliza's diary and enough corroborating evidence, the federal authorities might take interest. Blackburn's businesses cross state lines, which puts him under their jurisdiction." Hope and fear warred in Nora's chest. "How long?" "Months at least," Noah admitted. "These things move slowly." Nora gazed across the prairie, where the setting sun painted the grasslands gold. "I never expected to stay in Concordia this long," she murmured. "I'm not sure if I'm relieved or terrified." "Both is probably sensible," Noah replied with a small smile. He looked as though he wanted to say more, but instead rose to his feet, offering her his hand. "We should head back before dark." The ride to town was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. As they approached Concordia, the church bell tolled for evening service, its clear notes floating across the deepening dusk. "Nora," Noah said suddenly, breaking the silence, "would you have dinner with me tomorrow night? Not at the bell and whistle. Something proper. Nora looked at him in surprise. Are you asking to court me, Sheriff Steele? The directness of her question brought color to his face. I suppose I am, Miss Vaughn, though I recognize the timing is complicated. Complicated was an understatement. She was a woman accused of murder, in hiding from one of the most powerful men in Chicago. Any association with her put Noah at risk professionally and personally, and yet, yes, she found herself saying, I would like that very much. The smile that illuminated his features was worth any risk, Nora decided. For a few hours, she would allow herself to be simply a woman enjoying the company of a man she admired, rather than a fugitive waiting for judgment. Little did either of them know that judgment was already en route to Concordia, in the form of a well-dressed gentleman who boarded the eastbound train in Denver that very evening. A telegram from Ezra Blackburn folded neatly in his breast pocket. Monday dawned clear and bright, the summer heat already building as the sun climbed. Nora's shift at the restaurant passed in a blur of anticipation and anxiety. Several times, she nearly convinced herself to cancel the evening's plans. What right had she to drag Noah deeper into her troubles? But each time he passed the restaurant window on his rounds, tipping his hat in her direction, her resolve weakened. By the time she returned to her room to prepare for dinner, Nora had surrendered to the inevitability of her feelings. She unpacked her finest dress, a deep blue silk that had somehow survived her hasty flight from Chicago, and arranged her hair with more care than usual. Securing it with pearl-tipped pins she'd once considered selling during leaner moments of her journey. Noah arrived precisely at 7, wearing a clean shirt and his best waistcoat, his usually unruly hair slicked back. He carried a small bouquet of wildflowers, which he presented with an almost boyish awkwardness that endeared him to her all the more. You look beautiful, he said simply, his eyes conveying what words couldn't. Thank you. Nora touched the flowers gently. I should put these in water before we go. The gesture was domestic, ordinary, arranging flowers in the cracked pitcher that served as her vase, but it felt significant somehow. A moment of normalcy in a life that had been anything but normal for too long. Noah took her to the Occidental Hotel, the finest establishment in Concordia. The dining room was modestly elegant, with white tablecloths and actual glass windows, a luxury in a frontier town. A few heads turned as they entered, curious glances following their progress to a corner table. I hope this meets your approval, Noah said as he held her chair. It's not Chicago, but Chef Morris claims to have trained in New Orleans. It's perfect, Nora assured him, touched by his consideration. Though I'm afraid we've become the evening's entertainment. She nodded discreetly toward the other diners, several of whom were watching with undisguised interest. Noah chuckled. Small towns. Tomorrow they'll be saying we're engaged. The comment, though made in jest, sent a flutter through Nora's stomach. She busied herself with the menu to hide her reaction. Dinner was surprisingly excellent: tender roast beef, fresh vegetables from local farms, and a custard dessert that reminded Nora of her mother's cooking. Throughout the meal, conversation flowed easily between them, touching on books they'd read, places they'd seen, dreams they still harbored. I still want to teach someday, Nora admitted as they lingered over coffee. Children deserve an education, no matter where they live. Concordia could use a proper school, Noah observed. The current arrangement, classes in the church basement 3 days a week, isn't ideal. The casual reference to a future in Concordia, her future, stirred conflicting emotions in Nora. That assumes I'll be free to stay, she said quietly. Noah reached across the table, covering her hand with his. You will be. I promise you that. The conviction in his voice made her want to believe him, despite every rational argument against such hope. She turned her hand beneath his, twining their fingers together. "Noah," she began, but whatever she meant to say was interrupted by the arrival of Noah's deputy at their table. "Sorry to disturb you, Sheriff," Wilson said, his expression grave, "but there's trouble at the saloon. Strangers in town asking questions." Noah's face hardened. "What kind of questions?" "About a woman," Wilson replied, his eyes flickering briefly to Nora. "A woman from Chicago." The pleasant atmosphere of the evening shattered. Noah stood immediately, dropping money on the table. "Take Miss Vaughn back to her room," he instructed Wilson. "Stay with her until I come." Nora started, fear clutching at her throat. "It might be nothing," he said, though his expression belied his words. "But I won't take chances with your safety. Go with Wilson. Lock your door." Before she could protest further, he was gone, striding purposefully from the dining room. Wilson offered his arm awkwardly. "Madam, we should go." The walk back to the millinery shop was tense and silent. Wilson escorted her to her door, then took up position in the hallway. "I'll be right here, Miss Vaughn," he assured her. "Sheriff's orders." Alone in her room, Nora paced anxiously, her mind racing through possibilities. Had Blackburn's men found her? How? What would happen now? She considered packing, preparing to flee, but where would she go? How far would she get before they caught up with her again? Nearly 2 hours passed before she heard Noah's heavy tread on the stairs. Wilson's murmured report was followed by a knock at her door. Nora opened it to find Noah looking grim, his hand resting on his holstered revolver. "Pack your things," he said without preamble. "Only what you can carry easily." "They've found me," she stated, rather than asked. Noah nodded. "A man named Thaddeus Green claims to be a private investigator hired by Blackburn to find his wife's killer. He has a wanted poster with your face on it." Nora's knees weakened. "What did you tell him?" "That I hadn't seen anyone matching your description," Noah replied. "But he didn't believe me. He's taking rooms at the hotel, says he'll be asking around town tomorrow." "Then I must leave tonight," Nora said, moving toward her carpetbag with practiced efficiency. "We're leaving," Noah corrected. "I have a friend with a ranch about 30 miles north. We can stay there while I figure out our next move." Nora paused in her packing. "Our next move?" "Noah, you can't leave Concordia. You're the sheriff. This is your home. And if I stay, I'll have to either arrest you or lie to a legitimate investigator," Noah pointed out. "Neither option sits well with me." He moved closer, taking her hands in his. "Nora, I believe in your innocence. I won't hand you over to Blackburn's man, law badge or no." The enormity of what he was offering, risking his position, his reputation, perhaps even his freedom, struck her full force. "I can't let you do this," she whispered. "Not for me." Noah's expression softened. "It's already done. Wilson will send word when it's safe to return. Until then." He squeezed her hands gently. "Trust me." And God help her, she did. Despite every hard lesson life had taught her about the folly of trusting others, Nora found herself nodding. "When do we leave?" "As soon as you're packed. My horse can carry us both until we're clear of town. Then we'll find you a mount at the Jackson place." Noah checked his pocket watch. "It's nearly midnight. Most folks are abed." Nora finished packing quickly, adding Eliza's diary to her bag with special care. The small volume represented both her greatest danger and her only hope of vindication. She changed from her dinner dress into a practical riding skirt and jacket, securing her hair in a simple knot. Noah led her down the back stairs and through the alley behind the shops, keeping to the shadows. His horse, a sturdy bay gelding, waited patiently behind the livery stable. Noah mounted first, then reached down to pull Nora up behind him. "Hold tight," he instructed as she settled against his back, her arms circling his waist. They rode out of Concordia under cover of darkness, the only sounds the steady rhythm of hoofbeats and the night chorus of crickets and frogs. Nora pressed her cheek against Noah's back, drawing comfort from his solid presence. Whatever came next, at least she wasn't facing it alone. Dawn found them at a small creek, where Noah allowed his tired horse to drink. They'd ridden through the night, following trails only Noah seemed able to discern in the darkness. The rising sun revealed a landscape different from Concordia's surroundings: more hills, more trees, the prairie giving way to a rougher country. "We'll reach my friend's place by mid-morning," Noah said, helping Nora down from the saddle. Both of them were stiff and tired from the long ride. "You should rest a bit while the horse recovers." Nora sank gratefully onto a fallen log, accepting the canteen Noah offered. "Will your friend welcome unexpected guests?" she asked after drinking deeply. "Jack McPherson has been hiding folks who need hiding since the war," Noah replied. "Former slaves on the Underground Railroad, deserters from both armies, women escaping bad husbands. He doesn't ask questions." "And you trust him?" Noah nodded. "With my life and yours." He settled beside her on the log, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Jack's ranch is isolated. Green won't find us there." "But he'll know you've gone," Nora pointed out. "Won't that confirm his suspicions that you're helping me?" "Wilson will say I was called away on official business," Noah explained. "A prisoner transfer to Topeka. It's happened before." The care with which he'd planned their escape both reassured and troubled Nora. "You've risked everything for me," she murmured. "Your position, your reputation." "Some things matter more," Noah replied simply. Their eyes met, and in the golden light of dawn, Nora saw something in his gaze that made her breath catch a tenderness, a certainty that mirrored the feelings she'd been trying to deny. "Noah," she began, but he silenced her with a gentle finger against her lips. "Not now," he said softly. "When this is over, when you're safe and free to choose your own path, then we'll talk about what might be between us." The restraint he showed, the respect for her precarious position, only deepened Nora's growing feelings. She nodded, understanding the wisdom in his words even as her heart ached to express what she felt. They reached the McPherson ranch as Noah had predicted, just as the morning heat began to build. The property was nestled in a valley surrounded by low hills, a natural fortress of sorts. The main house was sturdy and well-maintained, with a wide porch and several outbuildings nearby. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a shock of white hair emerged from the barn as they approached, a shotgun held casually in the crook of his arm. Upon recognizing Noah, he lowered the weapon and raised a hand in greeting. "Steele, been a dog's age since you darkened my door." His voice was deep and gravelly, his accent suggesting Scottish roots. His keen eyes took in Nora's presence with interest, but, true to Noah's word, he asked no questions about her identity or circumstances. "Jack," Noah greeted, dismounting and helping Nora down. "Hope you don't mind unexpected company." "Never turned away friends in need yet," Jack replied. He inclined his head toward Nora. "Madam, welcome to Willow Creek Ranch. Not much to look at, but it's peaceful." "Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. McPherson," Nora said, offering her hand. Jack's weathered face creased in a smile as he shook it. "Just Jack, miss. No need for formalities out here." Inside, the ranch house was surprisingly comfortable, with solid furniture and walls decorated with paintings of Western landscapes. Jack's wife, Martha, a small, energetic woman with kind eyes, welcomed them warmly, insisting they eat before explaining their presence. Over a hearty breakfast of eggs, bacon, and fresh bread, Noah provided a carefully edited account of their situation, mentioning only that Nora was unjustly accused and being pursued by men who wouldn't ensure a fair hearing. Jack listened without interruption, then nodded once. "You can stay as long as needed. East bedroom's yours, Noah. Martha will make up the sewing room for the lady." "I can't thank you enough," Nora began, but Jack waved away her gratitude. "World's got too few people willing to stand for what's right," he said gruffly. "Noah's one of them." "That's good enough for me." The next few days established a routine at Willow Creek. Jack put Noah to work helping with the cattle and repairs around the ranch. No free lodging here, lawman, while Martha welcomed Nora's assistance with household tasks. The physical labor was unfamiliar but satisfying, providing distraction from the uncertainty of her situation. Evenings were spent on the porch, watching the sunset paint the hills in gold and crimson. Sometimes Jack told stories of his younger days driving cattle up from Texas, or Martha shared tales of pioneering life as one of the first white women in the territory. Other times they simply sat in companionable silence, letting the peace of the place wash over them. On their fourth night at the ranch, Nora and Noah found themselves alone on the porch after their hosts had retired. The night was clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. A cool breeze carried the scent of pine from the hills. "I received a letter today," Noah said quietly. "Wilson rode out this afternoon while you were helping Martha with preserves." Nora tensed. "What news?" Green is still in Concordia asking questions, "showing your picture around town." Noah's jaw tightened. "He's offering a reward now." "How much?" Nora asked, her voice hollow. $500. The sum was staggering, more than most people in Concordia would see in a year. "Someone will talk," she said numbly. "Perhaps." Noah shifted in his chair to face her more directly. "But there's other news. My friend with the Marshal's service is making progress. He's found 2 former servants of the Blackburns who are willing to testify about Ezra's treatment of his wife." Hope flickered in Nora's chest. They saw the abuse, and more. One of them was present the day Eliza died, though she fled before Blackburn could silence her. Noah leaned forward, his expression intense. "Nora, this could be enough. These testimonies, combined with Eliza's diary. My friend believes a federal prosecutor might take the case." Nora barely dared to breathe. "When?" "Weeks at least," Noah admitted. "The witnesses need to be brought to Kansas City, depositions taken." He reached for her hand. "But it's happening. The truth will come out." Nora's vision blurred with tears. "I never thought. I've been running so long I stopped believing there could be an end to it." "There will be," Noah promised. "You'll be free." The word hung between them: freedom. Not just from Blackburn's pursuit, but freedom to build a life, to put down roots, to follow her heart. Nora looked at Noah, at the strength and compassion in his face, and felt something inside her break open. "Noah," she whispered, "even if I'm cleared of all charges, I'll still be a woman with nothing to offer. No family, no fortune, just a tarnished name and memories I'd rather forget." Noah's hand tightened around hers. "Do you think I care about any of that?" "Nora, you're the bravest, most determined woman I've ever known. You've faced horrors and kept your dignity, your compassion. That's worth more than any fortune." He rose from his chair and knelt before her, still holding her hand. "I know the timing is wrong. I know there are 1,000 reasons why I should wait to say this, but life's taught me not to waste precious time." His blue eyes held her steadily. "I love you, Nora Vaughn. I think I've loved you since I saw you dive behind that water trough, defiant even in danger." Nora's heart pounded so loudly she was certain he must hear it. "Noah, you don't have to say anything now," he interrupted gently. "I'm not asking for promises. Just know that whatever happens, however this ends, my feelings won't change." Overcome, Nora leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. "I love you too," she whispered, the words both terrifying and liberating. "God help me, I've tried not to, but I do." Noah's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch reverent. When their lips met, it was gentle at first, a tentative exploration that quickly deepened into something more urgent, years of loneliness and longing finding expression in this connection. When they finally parted, both breathless, Noah rested his forehead against hers. "Whatever comes," he murmured, "we'll face it together." For the first time, Nora truly believed it might be possible. Their newfound closeness brought a sweetness to the days that followed, despite the shadow of uncertainty that still hung over them. They worked alongside the Macphersons during daylight hours, stolen moments of tenderness punctuating the routine of ranch life. In the evenings, they often walked together, exploring the hills around Willow Creek, talking of the future in careful, hopeful terms. A week passed, then another. Noah received regular updates from Wilson via the weekly supply wagon that connected the isolated ranch to the nearest town. Green remained in Concordia, growing increasingly frustrated by the lack of information about Nora's whereabouts. He'd expanded his search to neighboring settlements, but found no trace of the woman he sought. "He'll give up eventually," Noah assured Nora as they sat by a small stream not far from the ranch house. "Blackburn can't afford to keep him in the field indefinitely." Nora wasn't so certain. "You don't know Ezra," she said quietly. "He doesn't forgive what he sees as betrayal, and in his mind I betrayed him by trying to help Eliza escape." Noah frowned, picking up a stone and turning it over in his hands. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you. Something that's never made sense to me." "What's that?" "If Blackburn killed his wife, why does he want you found so badly? Why not simply let you run, grateful that you've taken the blame?" Nora had asked herself the same question many times. "I think it's the diary," she said finally. "Ezra knows Eliza kept one. He doesn't know what's in it, but he knows it could ruin him, not just the murder, but evidence of his business dealings, names of officials he's bribed. As long as I have it, I'm a threat." Noah nodded slowly. "That makes sense. And it makes the diary even more valuable as evidence." He skipped the stone across the surface of the stream, watching it bounce 3 times before sinking. "My friend's latest letter says the prosecutor is interested. He wants to meet with you." Nora's pulse quickened. "When? Where?" "Kansas City, as soon as it can be arranged safely." Noah met her gaze steadily. "It means leaving Willow Creek, risking exposure. But if there's a chance to end this—" Nora didn't need to finish the thought. Both of them understood the stakes. Noah took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. "We'll need to be careful. Travel at night, avoid main roads." His thumb traced circles on her skin. "And I'll be with you every step of the way." The tenderness in his voice made Nora's throat tighten with emotion. She leaned against his shoulder, drawing strength from his presence. "Sometimes I think this is all a dream," she murmured, "that I'll wake up and be back in Chicago, alone and afraid." "Not a dream," Noah assured her, pressing a kiss to her hair. "And never alone again if I have any say in it." They began preparations for the journey to Kansas City the following day. Jack provided fresh horses and supplies, while Martha packed food that would keep on the trail. The older couple had become protective of Nora, treating her with a parental affection that soothed an ache she hadn't realized she still carried. "You bring her back when it's done," Martha instructed Noah as they prepared to depart. "She belongs here in Kansas, not back east with those city folks." Noah's smile spoke volumes. "Yes, madam, that's my intention exactly." They set out at dusk, planning to ride through the night to cover as much ground as possible before daylight exposed them to potential observation. The weather favored them clear skies, a nearly full moon to light their way, and a cool breeze that kept the horses fresh. Noah led them along back trails and cattle paths, avoiding the main roads where travelers might notice and remember them. They spoke little, conserving energy, each lost in thoughts of what awaited them in Kansas City. Near dawn, they made camp in a small grove of cottonwoods beside a stream. Noah insisted Nora rest while he kept watch, and exhaustion overcame her objections. She slept fitfully, waking to find the sun high and Noah dozing against a tree trunk nearby, his hat pulled low over his eyes, hand still resting on his holstered revolver. The tenderness that flooded her at the sight surprised Nora with its intensity. This man had risked everything for her: his career, his reputation, perhaps even his life. The debt could never be repaid, yet she knew Noah would scoff at the very notion of debt between them. They continued their journey that evening, falling into a rhythm of night travel and daytime rest. On the third day, as they camped in an abandoned homesteader's cabin, rain began to fall, a gentle shower at first that quickly developed into a downpour. "We're lucky to have shelter," Noah observed, watching the rain through the cabin's single grimy window. "This will slow us down, but it also covers our tracks." Nora nodded, wringing water from her sodden jacket. Despite the discomfort, there was something intimate about being trapped together in the small space, the rain drumming on the roof creating a cocoon of privacy. Noah built a small fire in the stone hearth, careful to use dry wood that wouldn't produce much smoke. The warmth and light transformed the dreary cabin, casting flickering shadows on the rough walls. They sat side by side on a worn blanket Noah had spread before the fire, sharing jerky and hard bread from their provisions. Outside, the storm intensified, wind howling around the eaves. "Reminds me of nights on the cattle trail," Noah commented, leaning back on his elbows. Though the company's considerably improved, Nora smiled, the firelight catching the gold in her hair. "I imagine so. No snoring cowboys or smelly cattle. Just one snoring lawman," Noah teased, drawing a laugh from her. "You don't snore," she assured him. "I would have noticed during our journey from Concordia." Their eyes met, and something in Noah's expression shifted, becoming more intense. "You know, if things were different, if we weren't running, if your name was already cleared, I'd have courted you properly in Concordia." Sunday dinners after church, picnics by the creek, dances at the town hall. Nora's heart ached at the simple, beautiful vision. "I would have liked that," she said softly. Noah sat up, taking her hand in his. "When this is over, when you're free to choose your own path, would you consider staying in Concordia with me?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with hope and possibility. Nora searched his face, finding nothing but sincerity in his blue eyes. "Noah, are you asking?" "I'm asking if you might consider becoming my wife," he clarified, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the question. "Not now, not until you're truly free, but someday." Tears welled in Nora's eyes. "Even with my past, the scandal, the accusations." "Especially with your past," Noah replied firmly. "It's shaped you into the woman you are: strong, compassionate, resilient. The woman I love." Nora's breath caught. In all her imaginings of the future, she'd never dared to hope for this: a man who saw her completely, past and present, and loved her not despite her burdens but because of the strength they'd forged in her. "Yes," she whispered, the word barely audible above the rain. "Yes, I would consider that." More than consider it. Noah's face transformed with joy. He cradled her face in his hands, his touch gentle as he kissed her, a seal on the promise they'd made to each other. Nora responded with equal fervor, pouring into the kiss all the emotion words couldn't adequately express. Later, as they lay side by side before the dying fire, Noah's arm a comforting weight around her waist, Nora allowed herself to truly believe in the future they'd envisioned. A small house in Concordia, perhaps a school where she could teach children of their own someday. Dreams she'd abandoned long ago, now resurrected in this unlikely sanctuary. "I love you," she murmured, nestling closer to his warmth. Noah's arm tightened around her. "And I you, Nora Vaughn, more than I have words to say." They reached the outskirts of Kansas City 2 days later, the sprawling settlement a jarring contrast to the wilderness they'd traveled through. Noah led them to a modest boarding house in a quiet neighborhood, where his Marshall friend had arranged rooms under false names. "Marshall Taylor will meet us here tomorrow," Noah explained as they settled into the small but clean accommodations. "He's bringing the prosecutor and the witnesses." Nora paced nervously, the diary clutched in her hands. "What if it's not enough? What if they don't believe me?" Noah caught her gently by the shoulders, stilling her restless movement. "They will. The evidence is compelling, and Taylor says the prosecutor is a man of integrity, not easily bought." Nora wanted desperately to believe him, but fear had been her companion for too long to be easily banished. That night, she slept fitfully, dreams of Ezra Blackburn and the terrible day of Eliza's death haunting her rest. Morning brought clear skies and a knock at their door. Marshall Taylor proved to be a tall, serious man with intelligent eyes and a firm handshake. With him was a smaller, bespectacled gentleman he introduced as Mr. Harrison, the federal prosecutor. "Miss Vaughn," Harrison greeted her, his manner respectful. "Marshall Taylor and Sheriff Steele have told me of your situation. I'd like to hear your account if you feel able to provide it." For the next 2 hours, Nora relived the nightmare Eliza's abuse, their planned escape, Ezra's unexpected return, the fatal confrontation. She produced the diary, which Harrison examined with great interest, occasionally nodding or making notes. "This corroborates what our witnesses have told us," he said finally, closing the small volume carefully. "Particularly Mrs. Blackburn's fears that her husband might kill her if she attempted to leave." "Then you believe me?" Nora asked, hardly daring to hope. Harrison removed his spectacles, polishing them thoughtfully. "I believe Ezra Blackburn is responsible for his wife's death, yes, and I believe he has orchestrated a cover-up to place the blame on you." He replaced his glasses. "What I cannot yet promise is that we have enough evidence to convince a grand jury to indict him." Noah, who had been silent during Nora's testimony, spoke up. "What more do you need, ideally?" "A confession," Harrison replied dryly. "Failing that, more witnesses, physical evidence." He sighed. "The diary is compelling, but Blackburn's lawyers will argue it's a fabrication." Nora's heart sank. After coming so far, to fall short now seemed unbearable. Marshall Taylor cleared his throat. "There is another approach we might consider." All eyes turned to him expectantly. "Blackburn doesn't know we have the diary or the witnesses," Taylor explained. "He believes Miss Vaughn is alone, vulnerable, still running." His gaze moved to Nora. "What if she stopped running? You want to use her as bait," Noah stated flatly, his posture stiffening. "I want to give Blackburn enough rope to hang himself," Taylor corrected. "If he believes Miss Vaughn has been apprehended, that she's being returned to Chicago to face charges, he might show his hand." "It's too dangerous," Noah objected immediately. "If Blackburn realizes she has the diary, he won't get near her," Taylor assured him. "We'll control the situation completely." Harrison nodded slowly, warming to the idea. A carefully managed confrontation might yield results that months of investigation cannot. "And if it doesn't?" Noah demanded. "If it only puts Nora at greater risk," Nora, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "I'll do it." Noah turned to her, alarm evident in his features. "Nora, no, this may be my only chance to clear my name," she said quietly. to stop running, to have a real future. Her eyes met his, conveying what she couldn't say aloud in company: a future with him. I have to try. The plan took shape over the next 2 days. Word would be sent to Chicago that Nora Vaughn had been apprehended in Kansas and was being held pending extradition. Blackburn would undoubtedly come himself or send representatives to ensure her return. When he arrives, Taylor explained, we'll arrange a meeting ostensibly for him to identify you as the fugitive. The room will be prepared in advance, with officers concealed to witness any incriminating statements. And if he says nothing incriminating, Noah asked, still deeply skeptical of the plan. Then we proceed with our original strategy, Harrison replied. Build our case with the witnesses and diary, but this gives us an opportunity for more direct evidence. Nora understood Noah's reservations. The risk was considerable, but she also recognized the potential reward. Freedom, vindication, a future unburdened by fear and flight. The telegram to Chicago was sent. Now there was nothing to do but wait. 3 days passed in tense anticipation. Noah rarely left Nora's side, his protective instincts heightened by the impending confrontation. They spent hours planning for every contingency, rehearsing what Nora might say to provoke a revealing response from Blackburn without putting herself at undue risk. On the 4th day, Marshal Taylor arrived with news. Blackburn is on his way, should arrive by tomorrow's train. Nora's hands trembled slightly as she poured coffee. So soon? He wasted no time, Taylor confirmed. Brings a private detective and his lawyer. He accepted the cup Nora offered. We're ready. The meeting room is prepared, men in position. Noah paced the small room, his agitation palpable. I don't like it. Blackburn is too clever to incriminate himself openly. Perhaps, Taylor agreed, but men like him have a weakness: arrogance. He believes himself untouchable above the law. Such men often speak more freely than they should, especially when confronted with someone they consider beneath them. That night, alone in their room, Noah held Nora close, as if afraid she might vanish before morning. I should never have agreed to this, he murmured against her hair. It was my decision, Nora reminded him gently, and it's the right one. She traced the line of his jaw with her fingertips. I'm tired of running, Noah. I want to live our life without this shadow hanging over us. Noah caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Promise me you'll be careful tomorrow. If Blackburn gives any indication of violence, you'll be there, Nora said with confidence. You and Marshal Taylor and his men, I trust you to keep me safe. The words seemed to steady him. Always, he vowed, for as long as you'll have me. That would be forever, Sheriff Steele, Nora replied, a small smile lifting the corners of her mouth despite the gravity of their situation. Noah's answering smile was tender as he bent to kiss her, a kiss that deepened with the urgency of uncertain tomorrows. When they finally parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. When this is over, he promised, we'll go home to Concordia. Start that school you've been dreaming of, build a life together. I'd like that, Nora whispered. Very much. Morning arrived all too quickly, bringing with it the day they had both anticipated and dreaded. Nora dressed with particular care in a simple but respectable dress Martha had given her, pinning her hair in a modest style. She wanted to appear composed, dignified, not the desperate fugitive Blackburn expected. The meeting was arranged for 2 o'clock at the Federal Building, a solid stone structure in the heart of Kansas City. Nora arrived early with Noah and Marshal Taylor, entering through a side door to avoid being seen from the street. The designated room was spartanly furnished: a table, several chairs, a water pitcher. What wasn't visible were the officers positioned in an adjoining room, watching through a specially constructed panel that appeared to be a mirror. "He'll be brought in through the main entrance," Taylor explained. Harrison will accompany him, presenting it as a formal identification before extradition papers are signed. Noah positioned himself in a corner, his badge prominently displayed. Though officially outside his jurisdiction, his presence had been justified as additional security for a dangerous prisoner. His eyes rarely left Nora, his concern evident despite his professional demeanor. At precisely 2 o'clock, the door opened. Harrison entered first, followed by a tall, elegantly dressed man with silver at his temples and cold gray eyes. Ezra Blackburn. Behind him came a nondescript man Nora recognized as Green, the investigator who had tracked her to Concordia, and another man carrying a leather portfolio, undoubtedly the lawyer. Nora's mouth went dry at the sight of Blackburn. Memories of that terrible day flooded back Eliza's terrified face, the sickening sound as her head struck the fireplace mantel, Blackburn's cold voice ordering Nora to leave and never speak of what she'd witnessed. "Mr. Blackburn," Harrison greeted formally. "Thank you for coming. As I explained in my telegraph, we believe we've apprehended the woman wanted for your wife's murder. We need you to confirm her identity before proceeding with extradition." Blackburn's gaze fell on Nora, recognition and something like triumph flashing in his eyes. "That's her," he stated flatly. "Nora Vaughn, the governess who killed my wife and stole from my home." Harrison nodded, making a note. "And you're certain you can swear to this identification?" "Absolutely," Blackburn replied. "I employed her for nearly a year. She was trusted with my household, my child." His voice hardened. "Until she betrayed that trust in the most heinous way imaginable." Nora's hands clenched in her lap, but she kept her expression neutral, remembering Taylor's coaching. "Let him speak. Let him condemn himself." "Miss Vaughn has made certain claims," Harrison said carefully, setting the trap. "About the circumstances of Mrs. Blackburn's death, about your involvement." Blackburn's lawyer stepped forward. "My client is not here to be interrogated, Mr. Harrison. He has come as a courtesy to identify the fugitive." "Of course," Harrison agreed smoothly. "But as prosecutor, I must consider all relevant information before proceeding with extradition." "There is nothing to consider," Blackburn interjected. "This woman killed my wife in cold blood, then fled with valuable property. The Chicago police have already determined her guilt." Nora couldn't remain silent any longer. "I took nothing of value from your home, Mr. Blackburn, except perhaps your wife's diary." The effect was instantaneous. Blackburn's composure slipped, a flash of alarm crossing his features before he mastered it. "You're lying. Eliza kept no diary." "Didn't she?" Nora countered, her heart racing but her voice steady. "A small leather book where she recorded her thoughts and her fears. Her fear of you specifically." "This is absurd," Blackburn snapped, but his eyes darted to his lawyer. "I demand this woman be returned to Chicago immediately. This is clearly an attempt to delay justice." Harrison seemed to consider this. "Miss Vaughn's claims are serious, Mr. Blackburn. If there's evidence suggesting your wife's death wasn't as reported, there is no evidence because there was no crime." Blackburn's voice rose, his control fraying. "I wasn't even present when Eliza died. I returned home to find her dead and this woman gone." "That's a lie," Nora said quietly. "You were there. You came home unexpectedly. You were angry that Eliza was packing to leave you." Blackburn's face flushed with anger. "You ungrateful little," he caught himself, but not before the slip revealed his true nature. "This is slander. I won't stand for it." "Mr. Blackburn," Harrison continued relentlessly, "we have statements from former employees of your household, staff who witnessed incidents of violence against your wife. Disgruntled servants, Blackburn dismissed, but sweat had appeared on his brow. Fired for incompetence or theft. And your daughter, Nora asked softly. Is Catherine a disgruntled servant too? Does she also lie when she speaks of how you treated her mother? It was a calculated risk. Catherine hadn't provided testimony, but the mention of his daughter's name struck Blackburn like a physical blow. Leave my daughter out of this, he hissed. She knows nothing of adult matters. She knows what she saw, Nora pressed. Just as I know what I saw that day. You struck Eliza, she fell against the fireplace, and rather than seek help you decided her death was convenient. A wife who could no longer embarrass you by leaving. Blackburn's control finally snapped. He lunged across the table, his face contorted with rage. You should have stayed gone. You should have died on the road like the nothing you are. Noah was there in an instant, restraining Blackburn with practiced efficiency. The adjoining door burst open, Marshal Taylor and his men flooding into the room. Ezra Blackburn, Taylor announced formally, you are under arrest for the murder of Eliza Blackburn and conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. Blackburn struggled against Noah's grip. This is outrageous. I am a respected businessman. You have no proof. On the contrary, Harrison said calmly, we have multiple witnesses, documentary evidence in your wife's own hand, and now your own words recorded by federal officers. He gestured to the mirror panel, where several men were now visible. Your confession has been witnessed and will be entered into evidence. The fight seemed to drain from Blackburn as the reality of his situation became clear. His lawyer stepped forward, demanding to speak with his client privately. But Taylor was already reciting the charges as Blackburn was led away, his face ashen with shock. When the room had cleared, leaving only Nora, Noah, and Harrison, Nora sank into a chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. The confrontation, the tension of the past days, the realization that it was finally over, it overwhelmed her completely. You did it, Noah said softly, kneeling beside her chair. You stood your ground against him. You were magnificent. Harrison gathered his papers. There will be formalities, of course, statements to sign, possibly testimony at trial. But given what transpired here today, I'm confident Mr. Blackburn will face justice for his crimes. He smiled slightly. And Miss Vaughn will be formally cleared of all charges. Free, Nora whispered, the word still strange on her tongue. Truly free. Free to go wherever you choose, Harrison confirmed. Though I understand Sheriff Steele hopes that choice might be Concordia, Kansas. Noah's ears reddened slightly, but he didn't deny it. If the lady is amenable, he said, his eyes never leaving Nora's face. The lady is more than amenable, Nora replied, her heart too full for more elaborate declarations. The lady is eager to begin that life we discussed. Harrison tactfully excused himself, leaving them alone in the now quiet room. Noah took Nora's hands in his touch grounding her as the enormity of the day's events threatened to overwhelm her. It's really over, she said wonderingly. I don't have to run anymore. No more running, Noah agreed. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small object. I've been carrying this since we left Willow Creek, waiting for the right moment. In his palm lay a simple gold band, worn but beautifully crafted. It was my mother's, he explained. My father gave it to me before he died, said I should save it for when I found a woman worth spending my life with. His blue eyes met hers, vulnerable and hopeful. I found her. Tears welled in Nora's eyes as Noah knelt before her, the ring held between them like a promise. Nora Vaughn, will you marry me? Come home to Concordia as my wife, build that school you dream of, share whatever life brings us. Yes, Nora whispered, her voice breaking on the word. Oh, Noah, yes. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Nora felt the last shadows of her past finally receding. In their place came light, the promise of a future she'd stopped believing possible, with a man whose steadfast love had given her the courage to stop running and start living again. "I love you," she said, the words no longer frightening but liberating. Noah rose, drawing her into his arms. "And I love you, Nora Vaughn, soon to be Nora Steele." Their kiss sealed the promise, a beginning rather than an ending. Outside the window, Kansas City bustled with life. Unaware of the small miracle taking place within the federal building, a woman reclaiming her future. A love overcoming impossible odds. A new life waiting to be written. 2 months later, the church bells of Concordia rang out, announcing the marriage of Sheriff Noah Steele to Miss Nora Vaughn. The small town had embraced its returning sheriff and his bride with characteristic frontier warmth, especially once the true story of Nora's ordeal became known. The schoolhouse Noah had promised was already under construction on a plot of land near their new home, a modest but comfortable house on the edge of town, with a view of the prairie that stretched to the horizon. Nora had insisted on a large garden and plenty of bedrooms. "For the family we'll have someday," she'd said, bringing a smile to Noah's face that didn't fade for days. As Nora stood beside her husband on the church steps, receiving the congratulations of townsfolk who had become dear friends in such a short time, she caught sight of Jack and Martha MacPherson among the crowd. The older couple had made the journey for the wedding, Martha declaring she wouldn't miss it for all the gold in California. Later, at the celebration held at the Bell and Whistle, Harold Bell having insisted on hosting, Noah pulled Nora away from the festivities for a moment of privacy in the cool evening air. "Happy?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. Nora leaned back against his chest, watching the stars appear in the deepening blue of the Kansas sky. "More than I ever imagined possible." "Good," Noah murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple, "because I plan to spend the rest of my days ensuring you stay that way." Nora turned in his embrace, looking up at the man who had become her protector, her champion, her beloved. "I'm still not sure what I did to deserve you," she admitted. "Sometimes I feel—" She hesitated, the old doubts surfacing despite everything. "I'm unworthy of such happiness." Noah's expression softened with understanding. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle but firm. "You're everything I've been searching for," he said simply. "Everything I needed and never knew until you stumbled into my town and my heart." The conviction in his voice dispelled the last of Nora's doubts. She rose on tiptoe to kiss him, sealing their promises beneath the vast Kansas sky, the town of Concordia spreading out behind them, their future stretching before them like the endless prairie, wild, beautiful, and full of possibility. "Come, Mrs. Steele," Noah said when they finally parted. "Our friends are waiting and we have a lifetime to celebrate." Hand in hand, they returned to the warmth and light of the gathering, surrounded by people who had become family in the town that had become home. Nora Vaughn Steele, once a woman with nothing but her wits and courage, now found herself rich beyond measure in love, in purpose, in belonging. The past had been conquered. The future beckoned. And for the woman who had whispered, "I'm unworthy," and the cowboy who declared her everything he'd been searching for, that future promised to be more wonderful than either could have dreamed.